This video provides my comments on the proposed 225 billions in child tax credit and other safety nets for families in the 1.75 trillion Build Back Better plan. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. Now, the American Rescue Plan, as part of the 1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package, increased the child tax credit from 2,000 to 3,600 per child under age 6 and 3,000 per child between the ages of 6 and 17 for 1 year. The credit was also 100% refundable for 1 year, meaning that families received the full amount of the credit regardless of whether they paid any federal taxes at all. Hence, it benefited even extremely low income families. This historic tax cut helped cover the cost of food, housing, healthcare, and transportation, and resulted in 1 year reduction in child poverty of 30%, the largest in history. Single parents with an adjusted gross income of 75,000 or less and couples with adjusted gross income of 150,000 or less were eligible for the expanded tax credit. Single parents with an AGI of 200,000 or less or 400,000 or less for couples could still qualify for the standard 2,000 credit. Child tax credit under the American Rescue Plan expired at the end of December 2021. President Biden's 1.75 trillion Build Back Better plan proposes 225 billion in child tax credit, out of which 125 billion is already part of the current law according to the Tax Policy Center. Hence, the increase would only be $100 billion. Now, this tax credit would making it a permanent part of the tax code, a type of social security for kids. According to an analysis by the Tax Policy Center, more than 90% of families with children under the age of 18 will receive some benefit from the new plan. Research shows that the expanded child credit would likely reduce child poverty in the United States by 45%. It would provide child credits to 39 million neediest family households. However, many lawmakers oppose the child tax credit. So, what are the arguments for and against it? Now, the benefits of the child tax credit. Number one, the child tax credit is considered a game changer as a social safety net or type of social insurance or a type of social security for kids against child poverty. Just a few $100s per month can have life changing effects for children. Data from just 1 year of the expanded credit under the American Rescue Plan has proved it. Now, we have social insurance for the elderly and Social Security. We have it for the disabled people in the form of Social Security disability, and then social insurance for the unemployed and unemployment compensation. Why not for the kids? Number two, it's a tax cut for the middle and lower middle and poor people. It will get the poor and lower middle classes out of living a life of desperation and help them in the middle class save a little more for retirement. It's the poor and middle class that need the tax cuts, not the rich. But the Republicans party has been giving tax cuts to the rich and very little for the poor and middle class. Number three, the argument was made in 1994 during President Clinton's Contract with America debate by Republican Illinois Representative Henry Hyde that the Republicans vehemently oppose abortion, but then they need to show that they care about the children after they are born, not just when they were in the womb. That argument is still valid today. Many women say that they have an abortion because they cannot afford to care for an additional child. Abortion is a crime against humanity, but not helping children after they are born when society can afford it is also a crime. Literally, a few $100s per month per child can transform a family's life so that it is not living a life of desperate struggle for survival every day. Number 4, the child tax credit is an investment in kids, which studies have shown that it provides a very good return in the long run. A February 2022 Literature Review Working Paper 29754 of the National Bureau of Economic Research, titled Children and the U.S. Social Security Net, Balancing Disincentives for Adults and Benefits for Children, by Anna Azer, Hilary Hoynes, and Adriana Leras-Muni, shows that the benefits of government spending programs for kids include better educational outcomes, fewer health problems, lower crime and incarceration rates, higher earnings leading to higher tax payments, reduced public spending on social programs on them when the kids become adults. For example, the paper cites the benefits of the food stamps program. If one were only to consider the impact on adults, the marginal value of public funds would be 0.54, meaning that the cost would exceed the benefits. But once one considers evidence that food stamps increase the earnings and life expectancy and reduce incarceration of children, the marginal value of public funds, including these impacts on children, rises to 56. This literature review clearly points to benefits manifold greater than the cost of investments to alleviate child poverty through the child tax credit. It takes mental pressure off from kids and parents when they can provide for the children's needs. When benefits far exceed the cost of a program, that is a strong reason for implementing the program. Number 5. A hallmark of every developed country is the provision of a social safety net for its poor citizens. Asa Hoynes and Leras-Muni in their paper state, while America spends about as much or even more on the elderly than many other rich nations, it spends significantly less on kids. Among the almost 40 countries in the OECD, only Turkey spends less per child as a percentage of their GDP. For aid to families with children in the US spends 0.6% of GDP, covering 73 million children, which still leaves 12.6 million children and 39 million people in poverty, whereas most advanced countries spend between 1.6 to 3.5% of GDP, with Canada and Japan at 1.6%, Germany at 2.4%, the UK at 3.2%, and Sweden, Denmark at 3.4%. It's a big reason why the United States has a much higher rate of child poverty than most other affluent countries, and even has a higher rate than some not so affluent countries. Thus, it makes sense for the United States to make the child tax credit permanent, because similar benefits are the norm in developed countries, leading to reduction in child poverty. Now, what are the arguments against the child tax credit? Number 1. Parents will quit their jobs if they start receiving payments without working, depriving children of role models to teach them to work. That is very dangerous for our culture. This argument was backed by a paper from University of Chicago economists whose analysis indicated that 1.5 million parents would quit their jobs if the child tax credit was no longer tied to working. Professor Bruce Meyer, who co-wrote the paper, said it's a policy that's been transformed from one that encourages self-reliance and work to one that doesn't. Estimates of those likely to quit work if they receive child tax credit range from 300,000 to 1.5 million. A paper by Jacob Bastian finds the number quitting work to be around 410,000. Now, these two papers were simulations to estimate the future likely reductions in employment due to the child tax credit, which can give different results based on assumptions. Another paper by Columbia University, authored by Elizabeth Ananat, Benjamin Glassner, Crystal Hamilton, and Zachary Parolin, however, took real-world data for 6 months of payment of the child tax credit and found insignificant reductions in employment, and that a permanent expansion of child tax credit would not meaningfully reduce parent employment. The reason is that the supplemental benefits make it easier to afford the child care and transportation needed, such as by getting the car fixed to find jobs. Therefore, the number who find it easier to start employment is balanced out by those who may leave the workforce because of higher income. Another factor keeping parents in the workforce is the design of the child tax credit. There is no phase out of the credit till 150,000 in income for a couple and 112,500 for a head of household. They continue to get the full credit till these income limits. At these income levels, no parent would like to leave a job because they are receiving $250 or $300 per month per child. Second argument against it is full child tax credit is provided for even higher income earners up to 150,000 for a couple and 2,000 in child tax credit even up to $400,000 per couple. There is little evidence that child tax credit for higher income earners provides any positive social return on investment. The third argument against child tax credit is that some, particularly low-income parents, will not spend money in ways that benefit kids. But studies have shown that when low-income families get infusion of cash into the family, there are long-term positive outcomes for the kids in better health, better education, higher lifetime earnings, and longer lives. Yes, some parents will not spend all the money in ways that benefit children, but not many parents will end up spending their additional income on crack cocaine. As these studies show, overall the program will benefit children tremendously. Now, states have departments of children and families to handle situations with moms on crack cocaine who neglect their children. That should help minimize abuse of monies meant for kids' welfare. Just because a small percentage of parents may potentially misuse money meant for kids should not be used as an excuse to deny assistance to a vast majority of kids that would lift them out of poverty. Just saying, I don't want to vote for more money for welfare for kids which will just be used for crack cocaine or alcohol are lethal words that that immediately turn some against such programs. The negative image that immediately pops into the mind is of millions of single mothers on crack cocaine provided additional money to feed their drug habit. But that is not reality. But it results in abuse by a few being used as an excuse to deny desperately needed benefits to a vast majority. Fourth argument against child tax credit is that it just expands the welfare state, which would be a disincentive for some parents who are working. Republican Senators Mike Lee of Utah and Marco Rubio of Florida, in a February 4, 2021 joint statement, articulated this argument about the child tax credit. We have long said that the child tax credit must be further increased to help working families. In the current pandemic relief bill under consideration, we would support increasing the child tax credit to $3,500 and $4,500 for young children. However, we do not support turning the child tax credit into what has been called a child allowance, paid out as a universal basic income to all parents. That is not tax relief for working parents, it's welfare assistance. An essential part of being pro-family is being pro-work. Congress should expand the child tax credit without undercutting the responsibility of parents to work to provide for their families. The argument was further explained to the Associated Press by Scott Winship of the American Enterprise Institute. He stated, "The feeling is we win the battle against child poverty, but we lose the war in the long run because we've created incentives that make it tougher to reduce poverty." It's true that giving families money without the requirement to work could be a disincentive to work. However, let's look at the evidence. Paper by Ananat et al. Shows that people receiving child tax credit did not give up working. It's possible when both parents are working, one parent may give up working temporarily for a few years because of child care and other job related costs, as it does not make much sense for one of the two parents to keep working to gain only $5,000 to $600,000 net disposable income for the family per year. It would make sense that one parent of the two to stop working temporarily to take better care of the children. And that is not a bad thing. The parents can weigh the pros and cons of that decision, which may prove to be beneficial for that family. In addition, if subsidized childcare is being provided, it is unlikely that parents would give up working merely because they are receiving child tax credit. Only those for whom welfare has become generational, child tax credit will be a disincentive to work, but they are not working anyway, whether they are given child tax benefits or not. Thus, evidence so far shows that child tax credit will not lead to more parents leaving the workforce. $250 to $300 per month in child tax credit per child is not a huge amount as a disincentive for as an incentive for people to leave their jobs paying $20,000 to $40,000 a year. But even if a few hundred thousand additional parents leave the workforce, it's still worth it to provide the child tax credit benefit, as it will lift 45 to 50% of children out of poverty. Number 5. More welfare leads to illegitimacy. There is clear evidence that welfare benefits lead to more teen pregnancy and whole generations depending on welfare benefits without working, with single parent households led by mothers. Having worked in the welfare department of the state of Florida for 7.5 years, I have had first hand experience in dealing with such households. However, this is a more complicated problem to deal with. The single parent household statistics are skewed because many of these are really two parent households, but the parents live separately so that the family can continue to qualify for Medicaid and other benefits. If the parents lived together and neither employer of the parents provided health insurance, they would not qualify for Medicaid, and health insurance would take a huge chunk out of the family earnings, and medical costs can quickly bankrupt a family. That's why they choose to maintain separate households. When we exclude such parents out of the statistics, we are still left with a large number of single mother led families who have known no other means of support than welfare. Girls in such families know that as soon as they turn 18, they will lose Medicaid and likely food stamps and cash benefits. The only way to retain these benefits is to get pregnant before age 18 and have children. That is what is encouraging teen pregnancy and generational welfare. Which teenage woman who has seen her single mom get benefits would like to lose nearly $36,000 to $45,000 in potential free food stamps, cash assistance, Medicaid, and housing assistance benefits if she goes past age 18 or older, gets older without children? Healthcare reform is needed to tackle this problem. While all efforts must be made to persuade and encourage such families to help themselves get out of the welfare cycle, children having to live in poverty only perpetuates it as compared to providing the family with help to climb out of it. I would counsel African Americans and Hispanics to consider a scenario as an incentive to get in the habit of working and not depend on generational welfare. If minorities are asked to go back to their countries of origin because most came to the United States as part of the German mass murder conspiracy to flood the United States with immigrants, they will have to depend on work to support their families. They should develop work skills now because the United States provides the best opportunity anywhere in the world to develop such skills. If they miss this opportunity, survival will become extremely difficult for them. Please take advantage of this great opportunity. Their leaders should encourage it rather than considering fighting for more benefits for their communities as their primary job. Their most important job should be to encourage and make all members in their communities self-reliant. The sixth argument against child tax credit is the program will become another entitlement and costs too much. While the total program cost is $225 billion annually, approximately $100 billion is the additional cost, as $125 billion is already part of the existing law. However, Studies have already shown that the long-term benefits of children being lifted out of poverty are that they earn more as adults and will pay more in taxes, which will pay for some portion or all of the program costs in the future. When we take into account the situation of the rich getting richer because they get cuts and the tax law provides gaping loopholes for them to exploit, it will become clear that $100 billion in additional investment for such an incredibly beneficial program can be easily funded. This will be discussed in greater detail uh, in part 2 in part 3b video. To analyze the absolute necessity of the child tax credit and how to fund it without increasing the federal deficit and the national debt, let's look at the family side and the business side of the equation. First, let's look at the family side of the equation. Now, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Until only about 1 to 2 months ago, I had been in this trap concerning the child tax credit. I relied on the Apostle Paul's admonition in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 10. If any would not work, neither should he eat. This is a very sound dictum to force people to work. Many like me who advocated that child tax credit should be tied to work requirements rely on this dictum. However, as I studied the problem further for this video, I reached a different conclusion. The welfare programs already in place in business atmosphere have distorted the situation so much that the 2 Thessalonians 3:10 dictum cannot be applied without deleterious consequences for many families. With the welfare programs already in place, why would a poor single mother of 2 or 3 children want to get married to a person earning federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour or close to it and lose around $36,000 in free federal benefits? It's freakonomics at its best. The welfare programs are leading to freak but very rational decisions by poor single mothers. And why would she want to work at $9 per hour job if she is going to lose much of her benefits because she no longer qualifies for full benefits as she now has income? It's a very scary thought for single young mothers. Next, consider both parents working in an hourly wage job at about $11 per hour average with no medical insurance. Remember, the federal minimum wage is $7.25, and in some places, McDonald's and Walmart pay less than $11 per hour, and they get no vacations. They do not get to work on some holidays, which means they're not paid. So both parents would be working about 40 hours per week, usually to avoid paying health insurance. Workers may get slightly less than 30 hours per week and they get odd erratic schedules. But let's say under the best scenario, both parents working nearly 40 hours per week, then they would earn about $42,000 per year. Consider a simplified illustration of their expenses. First, consider their taxes and expenses. Assuming that they pay Social Security taxes at 7.65% and income taxes combined, which equal to 12% of their income after receiving all the earned income, child care, and other credits for a total of 5,040. If they have both children under 5, then their child care expenses could be $15,000 to $18,000 per year. Then add the cost of transportation for both parents working, of special work clothes, and eating out a little bit more and buying more expensive prepared foods because of necessity to save time. Say all these additional costs total $5,000 per year. They will qualify for earned income credit of say $2,400 and child and dependent care credit of $2,100. I'm using the 2020 rate rather than the 2021 rate, which was artificially high due to the COVID-19. Their remaining disposable income would be 18,460 to 21,460 per year to meet their housing, utilities, phone, internet, food, clothing, car payments, insurance, repairs and maintenance, baby's needs, and any medical co-pays or out-of-pocket costs if they have health insurance, and all other expenses. The family may qualify for Medicaid with a share of cost, which cost then has to be met first out of pocket before Medicaid pays the expenses. Or the family may have to buy health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, which means additional costs. Clearly, such a family would be living a life of quiet desperation, not knowing where to skimp on which costs to cover some other costs or unexpected emergencies. Remember, these are both parents working 40 hours per week. I have experienced the quiet life of desperation firsthand virtually my entire life, forced upon me by German masqueraders. So, a family earning $250,000 per year simply cannot imagine what 80% of full time working America goes through. You certainly cannot expect Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates and others to be able to imagine that. Then consider the additional factor that when the COVID 19 pandemic is over, some of the tax credits may be reduced, further reducing the disposable income. Now imagine the plight of a single mother who is divorced or her husband has walked out on her, leaving the children in her care and does not pay child support, or who has children out of wedlock. No wonder some people are working two or even three jobs and still cannot make ends meet. Then consider the plight of children brought up in a home where the single mother has never worked. That's why children brought up in poverty, whose basic needs cannot be met, do not do well in life, and desperately need assistance. So, the crux of the discussion whether to pay additional benefits to families depends on how the program is to be funded. Increasing the federal budget deficit and the national debt to fund child tax credit is not a solution. The other alternatives are to grow the economy at a faster rate or raise taxes. The United States is a mature economy and is unlikely to grow at a steady 6 to 8% annually for decades. It may be possible to sustain that kind of growth for a few years, maybe up to a decade, if we bring back our manufacturing from China, which itself can take a few years to implement. The only viable alternative is to raise taxes on the rich to provide benefits to the poor and relief for the middle class. That is justified when we consider the business side of the equation, which I will discuss in part 3b video, as well as solutions to the problem. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos. Some people do not have the time to go through the full length of videos. They find it more convenient to read the text of the video. Unfortunately, YouTube does not provide the capability to make the text of my videos available on YouTube. But fortunately, Facebook does provide that capability. So I make the text of my videos available on my Facebook channel, which you can easily copy.